Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Vesna, author of Stop Sabotaging Your Confidence. Vesna, welcome to the show.
Hello, Paul. Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure. Now, Vesna, I want to ask, would you please share your last name as well with our audience? I did not even want to attempt it because I am famous for butchering names on this show.
Okay, it is a long one. It's Grubacevic.
You pronounced that so much better than I could.
He's a practice.
Well, Vesna, we're thrilled to have you on this show. Are you ready to get started with our questions?
I sure am. Thank you.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Okay, so be clear. That's going to be the best advice I can give them. Be clear, especially about two things before starting to write the book. The first one is be clear about your outcome for the book. What it is that you want to achieve for writing the book. What's the purpose of the book? Is it to educate, to inspire, something else? And secondly, be clear about your audience. Who is your reader? Because you need to write for them rather than for yourself. So they're the two things I would suggest I get clear about, because it certainly helped me, because then I knew exactly what to write in the book, how to write it, the tone of the book, how to structure the chapters so they flow, the layout, the book cover so it appeals to the reader, making sure that you give the reader real value as well by keeping them in mind who's reading the book. It also helps with the marketing, because then you know where to promote the book and how to promote it. And also, importantly, helps to keep you motivated, because, there'll be challenges along the way. There might be blocks, distractions, and that purpose and clarity of outcome will help to keep you moving forward with the book.
Yeah,
the other thing, if I can... Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to add one more thing, which I notice some people struggle with. They get writer's block and put off writing books because they're worried about perfection, they have fears and self-doubt. So that's the other thing to let go of.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to touch on with you, because one of the mantras I always teach my clients is done is better than perfect. You can always do a second edition, you can clean it up, you can update it, but just get the book out there and share it with the world.
So true. I think perfection is overrated.
Well, and you also mentioned in regards to writing for your target audience, that's one of the biggest things too, especially if you're writing a how-to book or a business book or a guide. You want to make sure you're targeting to an audience. So if I'm doing a travel book on Maui, obviously I want to target that towards people that want to go to Hawaii, want to have a great experience. If I'm doing a business book, I want to make sure, if it's a publishing book, that I'm targeting business owners that are wanting to use it to leverage their platform. But you have to have that very clear, because if you don't, that book's going to turn into a mess real quick.
So true. And it also affects the flow of the book and the content and also the cover as well.
What do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, and different people have different experiences. For me, the hardest part was all the editing and the production and the proofreading and all the nitty-gritty, because in my book I have tables and formatting for, it's like a little workbook, so there was a lot of formatting and lots of detail and back and forth to get all of that right, so very fiddly.
That's always what I consider the hardest part. It's the editing, it's the proofing, it's making sure that there are not any mistakes in the book, and no matter how many editors you have, whether it's going through the indie route or through a traditional publisher, there's always going to be little mistakes. I think that's the hardest thing. It's literally going through a magnifying glass and trying to catch those little itty-bitty mistakes that are out there. And to me, that's always been the most frustrating part.
And for me, it took so much longer to do the editing and production than to actually write it. The writing bit was easy for me.
Yes. That's always the easy
Mm.
part. The hard part's the editing.
Yes, and I think people just need to allow the time for the editing. That's the bit that caught me by surprise, how much time it took to do that process.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Okay, well, I actually have two, if I may,
Sure.
because I use a two-pronged approach. I thought I'm going to use an approach for my existing clients and contacts, and then I used a different approach for attracting new potential readers and clients. So for the existing clients and contacts, I did a pre-order special. I sent an email out to all of them to let them know the book's coming out, and pre-announced the book launch, if you like, and gave them a special offer. If they pre-purchased before the book arrives, they save some money. And that worked really well because people felt special because they knew about the offer first before anybody else in the market, and they were rewarded for early purchases as well. And then when the book did arrive, I let them know it arrived and then processed the orders. So that one worked really well with existing clients and contacts. And the new potential readers and clients, I thought about lots of different options, but the one that sort of appealed to me the most and worked well was getting a stand at an expo, which had my target market, where the expo visitors would come through. And I organised to also speak at the expo, and I gave a little talk which educated people about the topic of the book, and then promoted the book as well. So I promoted the book at the actual talk, at the end of the talk, and also at the stand during the 4-day expo. So that gave a lot of exposure to new people.
I want to ask you a couple of quick follow-up questions in regards to that. With your existing
Great.
readership, you mentioned a pre-order. Are you talking about pre-order for the Kindle or for a paperback version? What are you talking about exactly in regards to the pre-order?
It was for a hard copy, a printed copy.
And who's doing the fulfillment on that? Was that Amazon or were you doing it yourself?
So that was myself and my support team. So it was basically the orders would come through via email usually, and then that would just get fulfilled at my office, and the books would get sent out in bulk, sort of, if 5 orders came through in one day or 10 orders or however many, they were processed the same day and mailed out. So that's the way that one worked, yeah.
So did you have a team that took care of the fulfillment, or were you having to do it yourself with that?
I did a couple myself because I thought, oh, this is fun, this is exciting, to send the first book out to your first order was exciting. And then I realised, I think I need a bit of help here because as more orders came through, I was starting to run out of time. So I got my assistant to help me.
Yeah, that is a great strategy. And a nice thing with that is when you do send out the hardcover book, you can also send out some information about your business, maybe like a one sheet or a thank you card. We're using those tactics as well.
Yes, so what I did was I had a letter that I sent out with the book. So everybody who pre-ordered the book also received a thank you letter and offer help with any questions as I read through the book. Offer for them to give me feedback on how they enjoy it.
Yeah, that is such a great strategy. And in regards to the new business, when you talk about these expos, so what was the process with getting that set up and everything?
Okay, so it's an annual expo that is run here in Melbourne. It's sort of like a spiritual type expo, self-development expo, which is pretty much the target market of the book. And so that's the thing that was really important, to make sure I picked the right expo that was going to have my market present rather than just any mass market expo. And so I organised a stand. I spoke to the organisers, requested to speak, and put in a application to speak. And then they chose speakers from the various applications. I got accepted, which is great. And then when I arrived at the expo, I set everything up, had posters of the book in the expo booth in my stand, and I had the book on display, spoke to people about the book, mentioned to them I'm doing a talk, and invited them to the talk. Did the talk, which was an educational piece around confidence, the theme of the book. Gave them some tips, exercises, and at the end mentioned the book and a special. If they buy the book today, they receive a special at the Expo. And had quite a lot of people come up at the end. And again, I had my assistant there to help process the payments and the orders.
And what was the, if you don't mind me asking, what is typically the investment to be part in these types of expos?
They vary. This one was reasonably, on the expensive side compared to some other ones. It was probably about $3,000 to $4,000 over 4 days. That includes the expo stand. That includes, all the marketing around it, flyers, brochures, posters, etc.
Got it. But obviously, with you being in front of your target market and utilizing the book as well for the back end too, I'm sure it ended up being pretty profitable for you.
Yes, and this is the thing with expos. It's critical that you follow up with people, and you have a way of capturing their details. So, I made sure that anyone who was interested, I also captured their contact information and then followed up with them after the expo. So a lot of the return on investment for expos happens 6 to 12 months after the expo. It's really important to follow up.
Yeah, the fortune is in the follow-up for sure.
Absolutely. And I've had some people at other expos I've done take up to 10 years before they do anything. So it's important to keep in contact with people.
What is a strategy that you recommend to our listeners in regards to going through the follow-up? Because sometimes you get people like they'll do follow-ups for a few months and then they'll just stop doing it. And they don't realize that is where the fortune is. They might not be ready to work with you right now, but they might be ready in a couple of years. So what strategies would you have that you would recommend for the follow-up process?
I have a couple of different ones. So these are general ones, not just for the book. So I have a database, an email database, and I offer for people to sign up to the database. They receive a free chapter of my book, actually, as part of the sign-up to the website. And they also receive free tips when they do sign up to the website to become a member. And so they receive some free resources and tips and the book chapter. And then from time to time, I send out articles and blogs, and they get those as well. And that just keeps me top of mind for them for when they're ready to work with me, to contact me. So that's one way. That's more of a gentle approach, if you like. And there are other people who actually request for me to follow them up. And they'll say, can you please call me in a month, or can you please call me in 3 months? I'll be ready then. And so I keep a track of who that is and when to follow up. And I'll make sure I do, because to me it's almost like a promise to call them. So I make sure I do call them. Just different approach, because some people like to have that personal follow-up. Some people like to just be kept informed, and then they contact me when they're ready.
Yeah, I mean, it really is true about the fortune being in the follow-up. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I feel people miss is that you just need to follow up, and don't be afraid to get on the phone and have a conversation. It doesn't have to be a text or an email. Just get on the phone and follow up with them, because you'd be amazed. You could turn that one call into a client very quickly.
And people love it. They feel so special because, you speak to them. They love that personalized contact, especially if you approach it as a conversation where you really do care about them, and you express interest in what's going on for them. And if it's just a conversation about what's going on for them and nothing more, at least you've cemented a relationship, and that counts for something.
Yeah, and that's my philosophy too. If it's one of those things where we're following up, and if we end up not being able to help that person, then we ask them, hey, if there are people that you feel that we can help, if you feel that it would help them with their businesses, then please feel free to make an introduction if you would like to. And it's just an amazing thing. We've had a lot of people do that. So you just don't want to give up on someone just because they might not necessarily be a fit to work with you. Doesn't mean that they don't know someone who is a fit who they can introduce for you. They can be your connector.
That's exactly right. And I think a lot of people in business make false assumptions in their head about follow-ups. They think that, they'll come across as pushy, they're worried about getting a no, they think they'll upset people. And it's all in how you do it. You need to do it in an appropriate way, do it with integrity and out of genuine care, not just because it's, getting a client.
Yeah, and I think people see through that really quickly. I know we were talking prior to the show about my company's philosophies, about having a holistic approach and talking about our core values, which is always about truth and service. And when you make it about the other person and show that you genuinely care, everything else takes care of itself. You don't need to have a sales pitch or a script. You just have to show that you care about someone, and that's what makes the difference. It's not anything else.
I so agree. It's all about relationship. I think people need to just remember it's the relationship that counts. Everything else, whatever flows out of that. But it's about treating people with respect and courtesy, and then, the business flows out of that if it's meant to.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, you ready for the hard question?
Okay, I'm ready for the hard one.
This is always the one. You're episode 240, and just about all of our guests always say this is the hardest question, and that is for you to tell me what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Okay, I have so many books. Oh, okay, so so it is a tricky question.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the one that sort of stands out, I guess I have like the top 5 to 10, and one of the ones that's in there is a book by a Dr. Deepak Chopra called Quantum Healing. And it's a book that it's all about the mind-body connection and the power of the mind and the power of will and the will to live and to survive, any health condition or issue that person is facing. And it's a very, very powerful book. Medical doctor who wrote the book, Dr. Deepak Chopra. And it's a book that I read as part of my PhD, actually. And what I learned from that was the enormity of what we can do with our mindset and the impact it has on our cellular health and our ability to improve our own health and well-being. And it was one of the inspirations, that book, to create my own techniques as part of the PhD as well.
Yeah, that is a great choice for your book.
Yeah, I love it. One of my all-time favorites.
Well, for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
Okay, again, lots of quotes that I love, heaps and heaps of them. One that I love is by Thomas Edison, the well-known inventor that people probably remember. And he said, if we did all the things we're capable of doing, we would truly astound ourselves. And I love that quote because human beings have so much capability, yet we can underestimate ourselves and our abilities. And, people sabotage themselves and people struggle to succeed, yet others excel. So, what is it that causes people to actually break through the obstacles? And that's what always fascinated me. And that's why I do what I do, help people to break through the obstacles, because there is so much more potential inside every one of us.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, we just got to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. It doesn't have to be perfect, just be the best that you can be.
That's exactly right.
Well, Vesna, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Probably best to visit my website at qttransformation.com. So that's the letter Q, the letter T, followed by the word transformation.com. And they're also welcome to receive a free chapter of my book if they want to become an online member.
Vesna, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's a real pleasure.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.